What if I told you that poverty doesn't just come from lack of money, but from something far deeper, something ignored so often that it quietly destroys lives, families, and entire societies? Imagine a hunger that never satisfies, a thirst that only grows with every sip, that is the silent engine driving many into ruin. Think of it like a fire left unattended. It doesn't explode all at once. It smolders, consumes quietly, and before you even realize it, the walls of your house are nothing but ashes. People don't usually fall into poverty overnight. It grows, like roots creeping underground, unseen, until it breaks through the surface and takes everything with it. And here's the shocking part. This force disguises itself as harmless, even natural. We excuse it, downplay it, pretend it doesn't matter. But the moment we ignore it, it takes control. It drains not only the pocket but also the willpower, the clarity and the discipline needed to thrive. It turns men and women into slaves of endless craving, leaving nothing behind but emptiness. Now pause for a moment. Why do so many with opportunities, with potential, end up in cycles of scarcity and regret? Why do entire generations repeat the same patterns? The answer lies in what we allow to rule our desires. But here's the good news. Once this hidden chain is recognized, it can be broken. The same force that drags people downward can, when mastered, become a source of strength. The solution is not about wealth alone. It's about reclaiming the heart, the mind, and the choices that shape destiny. Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover could be the key that keeps poverty from ever taking root in your own life. Desire left unchecked breeds chains. Break free now. Discover 7 biblical secrets to destroy lust before it destroys you. Grab your copy in the description and reclaim your freedom today. People rarely see lust for what it truly is. Most think of it as nothing more than physical desire, a fleeting thought, or a private weakness that hurts no one but themselves. But that shallow view is exactly the trap. When something is misunderstood, it's underestimated. And when it's underestimated, it gains power. Lust is far more dangerous than a single act or moment. It is a force that, if ignored, grows quietly, shaping choices, habits, and ultimately destiny. Think about it. Lust is not satisfied with small things. It always asks for more. What begins as a harmless indulgence soon becomes a craving that cannot be silenced. And yet so many treat it lightly, as if it's a natural part of being human that requires no discipline. That misunderstanding is the first step into bondage. Because once you stop treating it as a threat, you give it permission to rule you. Here's the deception. Lust doesn't always wear the face of desire for another person. It can disguise itself as greed for more money, hunger for more recognition, thirst for endless pleasure. It is the restless itch that tells you, just one more will finally satisfy, but it never does. Instead, it drains energy, focus, and time. The tragedy is that people don't even realize what they're losing until years have passed and poverty, whether financial, emotional, or spiritual, has quietly taken root. Misunderstanding lust makes people believe they are in control when in truth they are being controlled. It whispers lies of freedom. You can stop any time. This isn't hurting anyone. You deserve this. And those lies build chains strong enough to enslave entire lives. What's worse, when lust is not taken seriously, people stop guarding themselves. They stop building the discipline that protects them. And when the storm comes, they have no foundation left to stand on. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. A person spends what they don't have to chase after the feeling of importance. Another neglects their responsibilities, drawn constantly toward entertainment, distraction, or fantasy. Someone else loses relationships because their heart is always chasing after something or someone else. This is not just weakness, it's the energy, the potential, the resources given by God are scattered on empty pursuits. Misunderstanding lust means seeing it as a personal struggle rather than the thief that it is. But here's the hidden danger. Lust doesn't only ruin the present, it shapes the future. Every compromise plants a seed. Those seeds grow into habits. Habits turn into patterns, and patterns create destiny. Poverty is not always the sudden loss of money. Sometimes it's the gradual erosion of character, the slow leak of strength, the quiet draining of opportunities, because energy was wasted on cravings that never satisfied. Now ask yourself, how many lives have been left empty because lust was misunderstood? How many futures stolen because people thought it was harmless? The truth is, lust is not harmless. It is hunger without end, fire without restraint. And fire left uncontained does not just burn one corner of the house. Eventually it consumes the entire structure. But here's where the hope lies. When you recognize what lust truly is, not a weakness to be excused, but an enemy to be confronted. You can finally begin to fight it, and once you fight it, you can master it. Desire itself is not evil, but when desire rules you, it destroys. When you learn to rule over it, it becomes fuel for purpose, for discipline, for greatness. That shift, seeing lust clearly, is the first step to freedom. And until that happens, people will keep mistaking chains for freedom and wonder why their lives feel so empty. The danger is real, but so is the way out. Desire in itself is not the enemy. It was placed within us for a reason. Desire pushes us to build, to dream, to pursue. Without desire there would be no progress, no ambition, no fire in the human spirit. But when desire is stripped of direction, it becomes dangerous. It turns from a driving force into a drifting one, powerful but uncontrolled. Like a river without banks, it overflows and floods everything in its path. This is where so many lives lose their balance. People confuse having strong desires with having purpose. But desire without direction doesn't lead to purpose. It leads to distraction. You can spend years chasing after one craving, only to realize that it left you further away from the life you actually wanted. The truth is, without boundaries, desire eats away at discipline. It whispers that shortcuts are better than the long road, that pleasure is better than patience, and that right now is more important than what matters most. Look at how it plays out in ordinary choices. Someone longs for financial freedom, but instead of discipline, their desire pushes them toward quick gains and reckless spending. Another craves love, but without direction, they settle for shallow connections that leave them emptier. Others long for recognition, but the hunger drives them into endless comparison and envy, leaving no room for contentment. The desire itself wasn't wrong, but without direction it became destructive. The tragedy of aimless desire is that it never truly ends. It's like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. And when that thirst dominates a life, it takes resources that were meant for growth and wastes them on illusions. Time, money, energy, even relationships, all can be consumed by this endless cycle. Slowly, almost unnoticed, it turns lives into deserts where nothing fruitful can grow. What's worse is how subtle it feels. Nobody wakes up thinking, I want to waste my life today. Instead, they wake up with good intentions but no clear compass. And when direction is absent, desire becomes the compass itself. But a compass with no true north doesn't guide you. It spins you in circles until exhaustion sets in. That's why so many people feel drained, always busy but never fulfilled, constantly chasing but never arriving. This is where discipline steps in as the missing piece. Desire without discipline is chaos, but desire paired with discipline becomes purpose. When channeled correctly, desire can build empires, shape legacies, and change the course of history. But when left wild, it erodes even the strongest lives. It's the difference between a fire that warms a house and a fire that burns it to the ground. Think of the countless opportunities lost because people gave in to every craving, whole families fractured, potential wasted, generations stuck in cycles, not because they lack desire, but because they lack direction. Misguided desire spends everything today and leaves nothing for tomorrow. It's the silent thief that promises abundance, that delivers poverty. But here's the turning point. When you recognize that desire is not meant to control you, but to be guided by you, everything changes. You stop being a victim of cravings and start becoming a master of them. Direction gives desire a mission. It says, this is where we're going. This is what we're building. This is what matters most. Suddenly, the same energy that once led to waste begins to produce fruit. And here's the hard truth. Desire will never die. It will always exist within. The question is not whether you have desire. It's whether that desire has direction. If it doesn't, it will lead you into emptiness. If it does, it will lead you into life. There is a reason ancient wisdom speaks so strongly about the dangers of unchecked craving. Over and over, Scripture ties the downfall of individuals and nations to the inability to control desire. Poverty is not simply about the absence of wealth. It is the direct result of choices shaped by what the heart craves most. When the pursuit of pleasure outweighs discipline, poverty quietly creeps in, not as a sudden blow but as the natural consequence of misplaced priorities. Consider the warnings woven throughout Proverbs. The one who chases pleasure will end up poor. The one who refuses discipline will lack bread. The one who spends without thought will have nothing left. These aren't just moral lessons, they are practical reality. Craving without control burns through resources, blinds judgment, and leaves people vulnerable to traps they could have easily avoided. It's not that opportunity never knocks. It's that when it does, desire for instant gratification has already stolen the strength to answer. Picture a farmer who eats all his seed instead of planting it. For a moment his hunger is satisfied, but when the season for harvest comes, there is nothing to reap. Poverty is the natural outcome, not because the soil failed, but because the seed was misused. Desire without restraint works the same way. It consumes today what was meant to build tomorrow. This is why so many end up trapped in cycles of lack. The issue is not always that they never had enough, but that what they had was drained by lust, whether it was lust for more entertainment, more recognition, or more comfort. What begins as small indulgences slowly hardens into habits, and habits shape a lifestyle. Before long, entire households feel the weight of decisions made in the grip of craving. The connection between lust and poverty isn't just about money. It's about what is lost when the heart is enslaved to endless want. Time is wasted, relationships crumble, opportunities slip away, and the saddest part, many don't even recognize the connection. They blame bad luck, difficult circumstances, or the world around them, never realizing that their own unchecked desires quietly drained their strength and blinded their path. But here's the truth. Poverty in this sense is not random. It is the harvest of seeds sown through choices. The one who pursues fleeting pleasures plants emptiness. The one who chases quick fixes plants instability. The one who refuses to master desire plants decay. And what is planted will always come up in the end. Yet this is not meant to crush hope. It's meant to awaken it. If poor choices can lead to poverty, wise choices can lead to abundance. If unchecked desire can enslave, disciplined desire can build freedom. Scripture never condemns desire itself. It condemns desire out of control because it knows where that road leads. It is a warning, but also an invitation. Redirect what pulls you down, and it can lift you high. The lesson is simple but profound. What you pursue today determines what you inherit tomorrow. If desire rules, poverty grows. If wisdom rules, wealth, whether material, spiritual, or relational, begins to flourish. The question is not whether you will reap, but what you will reap. If you're serious about breaking free from the grip of lust, I've put together 7 biblical secrets to destroy lust. The link is in the description and pinned comment. Grab your copy today and start winning this battle. There's a cruel irony at the heart of unchecked desire. It promises satisfaction but never delivers it. It whispers, just one more, and you'll finally be content. But the moment you reach for it, it vanishes, only to reappear again with the same lie. This is the endless cycle of false fulfillment. People think they are filling their lives, but in truth they are emptying them. Think of the person who believes the next purchase, the next relationship, the next indulgence will finally bring peace. At first there's a spark of excitement, a fleeting sense of being alive, but it fades, and the craving grows stronger. What felt like satisfaction turns into restlessness, and what seemed like pleasure becomes dependent. It's like drinking from a well that never has enough water. Every sip leaves you thirstier than before. This illusion is powerful because it looks so real in the moment. It feels like happiness. It feels like reward, but it doesn't last. And when the craving returns, it returns louder than before. Instead of peace, there is emptiness. Instead of freedom, there is slavery. And the more people give themselves to it, the more they lose the ability to see clearly. They chase shadows, never realizing that what they are after can never be caught. This is why lust, whether for pleasure, wealth, or recognition, has such a devastating effect. It doesn't just waste resources. It rewires the heart to hunger for what will never satisfy. It convinces you that meaning is found in endless consumption. But what it really delivers is despair. A life built on these illusions eventually collapses because illusions can't sustain weight. They might carry you for a moment, but sooner or later the truth breaks through. And here's the heartbreaking part. Entire years can be lost to this chase. People wake up decades later realizing that all the things they thought would fulfill them left nothing behind but scars and regret. Relationships broken, finances destroyed, faith weakened, all in pursuit of a satisfaction that never actually existed. Poverty grows here, not only in the wallet but in the soul. The spirit becomes starved, even while the body indulges. But here's the good news. Once you see the illusion for what it is, it loses its power. The spell is broken. The endless cycle of craving is exposed as a lie. And when you finally admit that fulfillment can't be found in these shallow places, you open the door to a deeper kind of richness, the kind that doesn't fade, doesn't disappoint, and doesn't enslave. The question then is not whether desire will promise you fulfillment. It always will. The real question is, do you recognize the difference between what feels good for a moment and what truly satisfies for a lifetime? One road looks easier but leads to emptiness. The other requires discipline but leads to peace. The choice determines whether your life is spent chasing shadows or standing in the light. The illusion of fulfillment is powerful, but it is not invincible. The moment you expose it, the moment you refuse to keep feeding it, you begin to taste real freedom. And freedom is the only soil where true wealth, spiritual, emotional, and even material can grow. When people think of lust, they often reduce it to surface-level cravings, but the real battle isn't just physical or emotional, it's spiritual. The heart of the matter goes deeper than outward actions. Lust does not only take from your pocket or your time, it slowly steals from the soul. It blinds, hardens, and weakens the very core of who you are meant to be. Why? Because lust shifts the gaze inward, making self the center of everything. It pushes the soul into constant hunger, always reaching, always demanding, never satisfied. And when the heart is consumed with endless craving, there's no room left for higher virtues like gratitude, patience, or contentment. Lust doesn't just drain resources. It strips away vision. It blinds you to the light God designed, keeping you chained to the shallow while ignoring the eternal. Think about how this unfolds. A person might still look successful on the outside, but inside the foundation crumbles. The quiet voice of wisdom is drowned out by the louder voice of desire. Instead of living with clarity, the mind becomes clouded. Instead of walking with strength, the soul stumbles. And slowly poverty takes root, not just in finances but in character, in peace, in spiritual vitality. What's so dangerous is how invisible this kind of poverty can be. A bank account might still look full, a lifestyle might still appear polished, but the heart is hollow, the soul is starved. The deeper hunger, the hunger for truth, for love, for God, is neglected, and that neglect leaves people restless. They try to fill that void with temporary pleasures, but the emptier they feel, the more they crave. It becomes a cycle that no amount of indulgence can fix. And here is the truth. The spiritual dimension cannot be ignored without consequence. The soul was created for more than indulgence. It was created to be in alignment with the eternal, to walk in discipline, to reflect divine strength. When that alignment is broken, life itself becomes disordered. Lust doesn't just distract you from success, it pulls you away from the source of life itself. That is why its effects reach deeper than most realize. It is not simply a habit problem, it is a heart problem. The tragedy is that when people ignore the spiritual reality, they try to fight lust with willpower alone. They think they can manage it with discipline in their own strength. But without addressing the root, without feeding the soul with what it was truly meant for, they remain trapped. You cannot starve a fire by throwing more fuel on it. And yet that is what many try to do, chasing satisfaction in the very thing that is destroying them. But here's the hope. When you begin to strengthen the inner life, the power of lust starts to break. When gratitude replaces greed, when discipline replaces indulgence, when prayer replaces fantasy, the chains grow weaker. The soul finds what it has been craving all along, not a fleeting thrill, but lasting peace. And from that peace, real strength is born. The battle is not only about resisting temptation, it is about awakening the spirit. When the soul is alive, when it is rooted in something greater, lust loses its grip. Because lust thrives in emptiness, but it starves in fullness. And the fullness of the spirit is the one thing it cannot compete with. This is why the fight against lust is not just about avoiding what is wrong. It is about pursuing what is right. It is about filling the soul with what truly satisfies, so that the illusions of craving are exposed for what they really are. Empty promises. And when that happens, poverty, both inward and outward, loses its power. The effects of unchecked desire are never contained to one person alone. What begins in the heart of an individual always ripples outward. Poverty is not only personal, it can become generational, even societal. And it all starts with the choices made in secret, the unseen battles of the inner life. At the personal level, the story is tragically familiar. A person wastes years chasing cravings, pouring time and money into habits that give nothing back. Dreams once alive fade under the weight of distraction. Talents wither because they are never sharpened. Families fracture because lust takes priority over loyalty. What is left is not only an empty pocket, but an empty life. The tragedy is not only what is lost, but what could have been. Entire futures are stolen, not by lack of opportunity, but by the quiet erosion of desire left unchecked. But it doesn't stop with the individual. The fallout spread. A parent consumed by lust passes on instability to children. The next generation grows up in the shadow of brokenness, repeating the same patterns, never learning how to break free. This is how cycles of poverty are born, not always from external oppression, but from inward change. The seeds planted in one life can produce bitter fruit in another, and when these patterns multiply across families, they shape entire societies. A culture driven by craving becomes a culture built on waste. Consumerism rises, promising happiness in material things, but leaving emptiness in its wake. Exploitation thrives, because when people live only to satisfy themselves, they are willing to take from others without thought. Communities weaken, trust disappears, and systems of greed are born. What began as a private battle in the heart of one person grows into structures that affect millions. It's no coincidence that civilizations often decline not first from external attack, but from inward corruption. When the values of discipline, gratitude, and stewardship are replaced by lust for power, wealth, or pleasure, the collapse is inevitable. History is full of examples. Societies that had abundance yet crumbled because their desires consumed them. The wealth disappeared, not because resources ran out, but because craving outpaced wisdom. And yet the reverse is also true. When individuals begin to master desire, when families choose discipline over indulgence, when communities value character over consumption, societies grow strong. Poverty does not flourish where people live with vision and self-control. Instead, wealth multiplies, not just in money, but in creativity, stability, and peace. The health of a society is built on the strength of its people, and the strength of its people is built on the mastery of desire. This is why the battle cannot be treated lightly. It's not just about your personal struggles, it's about the impact your choices have on those around you. One person's decision to indulge can cause waves of pain. One person's decision to resist can inspire generations. Every act of self-control strengthens not only individual but the community. Every indulgence, ignored as harmless, weakens more than just the one who commits it. The fight against lust, then, is not only personal, it is collective. It is the difference between societies built on truth and those built on illusions. And it starts with the smallest of choices. What you give your heart to, what you feed your mind with, what desires you allow to rule. Poverty grows when lust rules, but when lust is mastered, a different legacy begins. Families flourish, communities strengthen, and societies rise, not because circumstances magically change, but because the foundation is no longer sand. But if lust is a hunger that never ends, then the only true solution is to look for a different kind of feast. Chasing more, consuming more, craving more, it all leads to the same emptiness. But real wealth, the kind that cannot be stolen or wasted, is found in places lust can never touch. Here's the truth most people miss. Wealth is not measured by what you hold in your hands, but by what fills your heart. A person may own little, and yet live with abundance because their soul is full. Another may own everything the world offers, and yet live in misery, because their desires are never satisfied. The difference is not in possessions, it is in perspective. When your heart is aligned with higher values, discipline, gratitude, faith, you carry riches that never fade. The problem is that lust distracts from these treasures. It keeps people looking downward, feeding on scraps when they were meant to sit at a banquet table. Lust says, just one more, and you'll be happy. But joy, real joy, comes not from taking but from living in truth. Lust says you'll only be satisfied when you get what you want. But fulfillment is found when you realize you already have what you need. Think about it. A person with self-control is richer than a person with endless wealth but no restraint. A person with gratitude carries more treasure than someone with bolts of gold but no peace. The greatest riches are not in possessions but in the ability to live free from chains, free from cravings that consume and desires that destroy. This freedom is wealth in its purest form, and this is why poverty grows when lust rules. Because lust blinds people to the treasures already available to them. It tells them they are poor until they indulge, when in reality they become poor because they indulge. True wealth is hidden in plain sight, in wisdom, in faith, in love, in integrity. These are the currencies that never lose value, the riches that cannot be stolen, the treasures that outlast even death. But here's the good news. No matter how long someone has been chasing shadows, It's never too late to turn toward the light. The moment you recognize the lie of lust and choose to step away, you begin to uncover riches that were waiting for you all along. Every act of discipline adds to your wealth. Every choice of gratitude builds your fortune. Every victory over desire strengthens the foundation of a life that cannot be shaken. This is the kind of wealth that passes on to others. Families are healed, communities restored, societies strengthened, not by more indulgence but by people who discover that true riches come from walking in freedom. That kind of wealth multiplies because it inspires others to pursue it too. So ask yourself this: what kind of riches do you want to pursue? The kind that fades with every indulgence, or the kind that grows stronger with every act of wisdom? The choice is yours. One road leads to emptiness and poverty. The other leads to abundance that never ends. The battle with lust is real, but so is the promise of freedom. And when you walk in that freedom, you will discover a treasure worth more than anything this world could ever offer. That is where true wealth is found. Every chain begins with a choice, and every chain can be broken the same way. The truth is simple but sobering. Unchecked desire will always lead to emptiness, waste, and eventually poverty of the soul. But it doesn't have to end that way. You were not created to live enslaved by cravings. You were meant for freedom, for clarity, for a life rich in purpose and strength. Look back at the lives ruined by lust. People who had talent, opportunity, even abundance, yet ended up empty. It's not because they were destined to fail. It's because they gave power to the very thing that stripped them of it. But here's the good news: you can choose different. The moment you stop believing the lie that indulgence will satisfy, you begin to see the truth that discipline, faith, and wisdom bring a kind of wealth lust can never touch. The battle isn't easy, but it is winnable. And the victories you win aren't just for yourself. They shape your family, your future, your legacy. Every time you resist, every time you stand firm, you plant seeds of abundance that grow into something lasting. The question is not whether this fight is worth it. The question is whether you're willing to. That's why I've put together something to help guide you through this struggle. 7 biblical secrets to destroy lust before it destroys you. It's a clear, practical path to breaking the chains of desire and stepping into the freedom you were made for. You don't have to keep circling the same cycle. You can rise above it. The link is right there in the description and also pinned in the comments. Don't put this off. Take the step because freedom doesn't wait for tomorrow. It begins the moment you decide lust will no longer rule over you.